The Genesis 6 narrative states that the Nephilim are on the earth in those days and also afterwards. If that's true, can we find evidence that corroborates this? I'm L.A. Marzulli. Join me as we go on the trail of a Nephilim. First film, America's Stonehenge, the Canaanite connection, we showed the enigmatic ball stone and how this discovery points to the fact that the Phoenicians, who were a Canaanite tribe inhabiting the Levant, may have built America's Stonehenge 4,000 years ago. This fact alone rewrites history as we know it. We also discussed the mysterious stone sacrificial table, as well as the oracle chamber and how this links back to ancient occult practices in the Old World, specifically but not limited to Norba, Italy, as well as the hypogeum located on the island of Malta. In Part 2, which is Episode 5 of the On the Trail of a Nephilim series, we delve into the alignments that point to a direct link to other megalithic sites that are thousands of miles away from America's Stonehenge. Yet, there is a direct connection, a link that cannot be denied. There is absolutely no way to have this kind of mathematical precision unless the person who is doing this is above, in the air. In other words, the connectivity between the sites demonstrates technology that has only been recently available in the modern age. This is not a coincidence. Who is the Prince of the Power of the Air? I'm L.A. Marzulli, and we're on the trail of a Nephilim, and I'm here at America's Stonehenge in New Hampshire. It's a 4,000-year-old megalithic site. We have no idea really who built this, and of course there's all sorts of controversies swirling around. It's a root cellar. It held potatoes. The Patty family built this. But why does a farmer or a shoemaker take stones like this, which weigh 4 to 5 tons, and erect them? Why does a family have a stone altar with a groove around the entire surface of the altar to allow the blood to be collected at the bottom? Why are there solar alignments? Why are there standing stones or menhirs all over the site? And of course, what took us completely by surprise is when Dennis Stone showed us the connectivity between America's Stonehenge and Chaco Canyon, Teotihuacan in Mexico, Machu Picchu in Peru, the Canary Islands, and of course, Stonehenge in England, where that line that goes from the center point here out to the summer solstice standing stone hits the center spot of the Trilithon in the UK. And that and all these other points is certainly deliberate and not just a mere coincidence. Join us as we travel and explore the mysteries of America's Stonehenge. Kelsey Stone was a 23-year-old college student with a curious mind. Kelsey is the third generation of a Stone family at America's Stonehenge, so he's grown up with all the information about this enigmatic site that has been handed down from his grandfather to his father Dennis to him. Kelsey told me that one night as a child, he actually slept on the stone altar. I think that's something I would not opt to do. Kelsey knew about the precise alignments that are embedded in the 115-acre site. He had watched the summer solstice sunrise over the large standing stone since the early days of his childhood. He knew perhaps instinctively that whoever constructed this site had knowledge that was something out of the ordinary. It was with this mindset that this college student, who was studying to be an engineer, decided to go on Google Earth and see if there was any connection to other megalithic sites. What Kelsey found was incredible. Here is the story of his discovery. So Kelsey, you really discovered something that was, in my opinion, just amazing. and you allowed me to use it in my book,
Sure.
On the Trail of the Nephilim, and I thank you for that. And I want to talk about this because the last time I was here, you weren't here. So now we get to talk face to face, which is, for me, a real honor. So tell us the backstory about what led you to go on Google Earth and see where this line would eventually lead up.
So the line itself was actually somewhat accidental. I was playing on the computer on Google Earth. Just happened to be where my old house was pretty almost dead center north of the site. So, and I had a monolith behind my house. I was like, oh, I mean, I'll draw a line. I'll just see where does that actually go? Does it have to go right over it? That'd be really neat. But then I kind of started getting a little more curious as to how far can I extend the line. So I started doing some of the other alignments. One in particular was the summer solstice sunrise alignment. This is our summer solstice staying stone. This marks the longest day of the year, typically around June 21st, plus or minus a couple of days depending on the year. And this is just one of the number of standing stones that we have on the site that mark very important events on our annual year.
We opened this one up around 1973. We actually began the astronomical work back in 1967, and after 51 years we're still finding out different features of the site astronomically, and so the work basically continues.
And that's from the center of America Stonehenge out to the summer solstice standing stone.
That's right, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, so basically kind of gun sight from that point there. And up on the center of the site we actually have two different points where we use, depending on the alignment, where the center point actually is. But yeah, so I went from the center of the site to the monolith and then kind of extended that line past that point, quite a bit past that point. And I ended up going pretty much right over the Atlantic to England, and I kind of started zooming in because I was like, oh, that's pretty close. That's southern England. Where does it actually go? I happened to land pretty much right on Stonehenge.
Now, when you saw that,
yes.
I mean, when I saw it, I fell out of my chair. But when you saw it, I mean, the significance of this is unbelievable because no one on this entire planet for thousands of years knew the connection between those 2 points. That's your intellectual property. It's your discovery. In my opinion, it's like, Magellan discovering whatever. I mean, it's that important, it's that monumental. There are standing stones that circle America's Stonehenge. These granite megaliths were put into the ground thousands of years ago and have weathered countless bitter cold winters and long hot summer days. These stones were laid in their current position with the utmost care as they reflect with great precision the solstices and equinoxes of our calendar year. What you are about to see shows us that the builders of America's Stonehenge must have known about the connection with the summer solstice standing stone and Stonehenge, England. In other words, if this standing stone were moved just a foot in either direction, the line would not intersect Stonehenge, England, some 3,193 miles away. But as we shall see, the ancient standing stone allows someone standing at the center of America's Stonehenge to connect with Stonehenge, England. How was this possible?
Okay, we're looking at Google Earth, and right in this area right here is America's Stonehenge, located in North Salem, New Hampshire. You can see these avenues that have been cut in the trees. These are all astronomical alignments with the sun, moon, and the star alignment. This particular line right here is going out to the northeast, and it is the summer solstice sunrise alignment. And as we change the scale on this, you can see it goes across New England. It goes through right through Newfoundland, and 3,200 miles later we're going past Ireland into southern England into an area called Wiltshire, the Salisbury Plains. And as we change the scale here, increase the size, you can see as it appears Stonehenge. And if you notice, the line goes right through to this trilithon right here, right through the center of it, and the line actually kind of goes through the next trilithon. This is that horseshoe shape right here, and so it goes perfectly through it after 3,200 miles on our summer solstice sunrise, as discovered by my son Kelsey back in 2012.
So what happens next?
Well, honestly, it didn't even hit me at first. I was like, oh, I can't do right? You know, it's like it just the fact that it went right down the middle after going across the line for a couple thousand miles
in the middle of the center Cholathon.
Exactly, yeah, right down the center of the site. So that's even if it was off by a few miles over that point, I'd still be pretty impressed.
It's a big wow.
Yeah, but right through the center was pretty crazy.
Clay, you were just filling me in on some of the alignments that you guys were working with and discovering. When you start talking about alignments that go many, many miles, crossing oceans and into continents, I'm sorry, that seems supernatural. That definitely has that supernatural flavor. This is something bigger than just primitive man. This is something supernatural.
So what was your reaction? I mean, he shows you this thing, and what do you do?
It's an old wow moment, and I got chills on my back, and I said, Dad, it can't be, And he showed it to me, and I'm like, that's amazing. I said, all these years we've been looking at that stone since at least the 1970s,
Wow.
And we had no clue. But if you had X-ray, Superman vision, I should say, then, it's like you could actually see Stonehenge on that day. It goes right through the center of the largest triathlon. I thought of my dad too. I said he didn't even know it. He just died 2 years before that, and we had never known that. It's like, wow, he would have liked that too.
Well, no one on the planet. I mean, literally for thousands of years, this lay hidden, and you discover it, and thank God for Google Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
What happens after that? You don't stop messing with the line. So then tell us.
Yeah, we tried a few more times. A few other people tried it on, I think, different applications to make sure it wasn't just a Google Earth anomaly there.
Right.
And it seems like it checks out. But I also, I extended the line further and kind of used the same line as a reference, and it kept going further across, further east. And it went out to the eastern Mediterranean over Beirut. And some other interesting spots over there as well. I think you noted a few points over there as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Well, we're going to check this out, but it's right now, based on our research, it's 47. The line continues from America Stonehenge through England Stonehenge down to Beirut. When you extend the line from there, you wind up, and I don't know the significance of this, Baalbek is 47.5 miles north of the line, and Gilgal Raphaim, the Circle of the Giants, is 47.5 miles south of it.
Yeah, so right in the middle.
Right in the middle, so there's something going on with that.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating.
When I first saw this, there was an engineer where we live, and I called this guy on the phone, and I said, hey, how would you do this in the ancient world? And I guess it was a slow day at his office, whatever, so he went on Google Earth, exactly what you did, and when he saw it bisecting the Cholathon at Stonehenge, he was blown away. It was a wow moment for him too. And he said, where'd you get this? And I immediately said, Kelsey Stone figured this out. And then I asked him something, how would you do this in the ancient world? And he said, the only way you can do it is by triangulation. Now, this is what's so mysterious about this. Someone has to be in the air at this point to do this. I mean, you can't get a string long enough from where we are now, sitting here essentially, out to Stonehenge, England. You can't do that.
When I consider the stones and when I consider some of the structures that have been put in place, and by the way, I've been to Serpent Mound, the thing that strikes me is just the complexity of it. Now, I'm not an expert in surveying, but I did do road surveying work on the highway for, I believe it was 6 years. I was a guy that carried the survey equipment, I carried the chain, I carried the rod, I did road surveying. I know how important it is and how complex it can become, especially when you're dealing with curvature. And so when I'm looking at what is built by so-called ancient, primitive people, and I see the structures and the scale of the structures, the curvature that you see within the structures, I'm like, could I do it without my surveying tools? No. I don't know how we would do it. It would look far more crude than what it does now.
So Hugh, here we are at the mysterious and enigmatic Stonehenge in the UK. and I'm absolutely amazed at what I'm looking at, and in awe of the stonework that's here. What was it like? Try to go back for us, if you can, and tell us the very first time you set eyes on this.
Well, I would drive by it on the A303 road here with my parents when I was young, and when we first visited it, I was just kind of blown away. I was just like stunned by this ancient, massive monument in the middle of this random landscape, it seemed. Just to stun me. I've been in a few stone circles before. They're rough-hewn stones, they were kind of small circled, some of them, but this one was like a whole different class. It was like a cathedral against a church. It was something special. And so when you get a sense of the energies here, and I really came here because the crop circles were appearing nearby. And
Really?
And
that was your initial interest?
Yeah, that's what kind of got me into this, this whole megalithic subject. And so, it kind of drew me into the landscape of the studying these crop circles that kept appearing mysteriously throughout England, but especially in this area and around Avebury, which is another major stone circle. And so, yeah, it kind of really opened me up to this, the ley lines, the earth energies, the astronomy, the hidden mysteries that are encoded within these sites.
So we're here at the Summer Solstice Standing Stone, and this is amazing, erected thousands of years ago to show when the sun would come up at the longest day of the year. But what's intriguing about America's Stonehenge is that you've got a lot of these standing stones, and they mark not only the solstices but the equinoxes.
That's right.
And also the lunar highs and lows. This is where you took the line on Google Earth and went from the center of the henge out through this stone, and can continue to on up at Stonehenge.
Exactly. So it went right from the center point of the site, and then the line went straight, basically about as close as I could get it from a satellite image anyway, right over the top of the stone, and it went, basically straight through Stonehenge, and then off to Lebanon.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
There are other stones here which mark the rising and setting of the moon.
That's right, yep.
And this whole site is on an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle.
That's correct. Yep.
Which in itself is absolutely incredible, because as we talked earlier, very difficult to plot that 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. One of the most astounding discoveries that you guys made on the site was that the whole site is based on an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle, which, to the average Joe today, well, who cares, right? But you go back 4,000 years, to create something like that takes an enormous amount of time and knowledge of the precession, because the moon isn't, it's not like the sun. It's a whole different deal, and it means someone has to watch where the moon sets and rises. Unless you really understand that, I don't think most people understand the significance of an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. And of course, in Newark, Ohio, was the Octagon Mound is also based on an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle, as is the Serpent Mound. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so we had the sun cycle, which is 12 months, and then we have we found out during the 1960s and 70s, during the early research, before Kelsey was around, that we had also the lunar major and minor standstills, and this is from survey work, and actually, with the sun we were able to watch it actually rise and set. With the moon, we could watch it on the minors, but we have never opened up the majors. But when they surveyed it, they were in the correct position for the lunar majors.
So when you say the majors, what do you mean by that? Explain that.
Yeah, the moon's orbit is tilted to the Earth's orbit around the sun about 5 degrees and 8 minutes, the inclination. So the moon goes further to the north and south than the majors, about 5 degrees roughly more than the solstices, and to the south also. The minors, interestingly enough, are on what we call the cross-quarter days. These are the mid-season, August 1st, November 1st, February 1st, May 1st. These are the dividers of the seasons, actually, in ancient cultures. But the moon, if you could track the moon very carefully, you could also use this information possibly to predict eclipses. And if you can predict eclipses, you would have a lot of power over your general population. It would have been an amazing thing to see.
There are many sites that we've been to. Stonehenge in America, they call it America's Stonehenge. The Great Circle Mound and the Octagon Mound in Ohio. Stonehenge, England, and of course the sites that we're seeing in Portugal. All of these sites are based on an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. Yeah. And this is what I'm trying to understand. In order to do that, in order to understand that it's an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle, someone has to stand and watch the moon rise and set every day for 18-and-a-half years. that is almost an impossible task because the weather is not going to cooperate for 18 and a half years. And how would you record that? In other words, in the Americas, there's no writing utensils. Deer hide? You understand what I'm saying? In America, there are no writing utensils to do this with. We see advanced trigonometry, advanced geometry, and everything is built on an 18 and a half year lunar cycle. Coming over here to Portugal, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
18 and a half year lunar cycle. How was this done? Do you have any idea?
Someone did it.
Okay.
Okay. Someone did it. But this was, I think, universal knowledge that came from somewhere.
Okay, but wait, stop right there. This is my point. It came from somewhere, but no one really knows where it came from. Is it possible? And this is conjecture. Is it possible that once again we go back to the Enochian, the Book of Enoch, that particular text, where it says that this procession, this knowledge of the planets and cycles was given to mankind by the fallen angels?
Eventually.
Because that clears up the matter.
I cannot.
We don't know.
But eventually, because this is so huge and so universal.
It's prevalent. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
But this is my point, and it's like we talk about the 18 and a half year lunar cycle, and almost in a capricious way. It's like, well, everyone knows that.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult. I mean, if we didn't know about that, and I said, man, well, go out and track the moon for 18 and a half years. I mean, that's a Herculean task.
Yeah. But perhaps some of this knowledge was collected during thousands of years, and or was recollected during thousands of years after being given to someone.
So, is it safe to say that we really don't know where it comes from?
Yeah.
Okay. So we agree on that.
We don't know.
All right.
I don't know.
There are sectors of the academic community that are becoming more and more aware of just how a powerful effect the Book of Enoch had upon the first century church. Within the Second Temple period, it is an encapsulation of their understanding of the origins of darkness, as well as their knowledge of the Watchers, of the Nephilim, and of the conflict that they even found themselves in before Jesus appeared on the scene. Within academic circles, this is known as intertextuality. And this deals with the historical influence that the Book of Enoch had upon the writers of the New Testament. It's alluded to by Jesus. It's directly clipped and pasted by, if you will, by Jude. It's referred to by Peter and as well as the Apostle Paul in their writings. And within this concept of intertextuality, what that means is their development of spiritual warfare theology and demonology and even concepts of end-time prophecy were influenced heavily by the Book of Enoch. Now, it's not scripture, but it helps us dive into the mindsets and what the early church were reading as they were formulating their theological positions.
Carnac, France. We have the largest collection of menhirs, or more commonly referred to as standing stones, spread out over the landscape like silent sentinels from a lost civilization. We interviewed Howard Crowhurst, who has spent the last 35 years of his life living in Karnak and studying the mysteries of this incredible site. Is this site built on an 18 and a half year lunar cycle?
Not this particular part.
Okay. Other parts are?
There are parts expressed, yeah.
Okay.
In 2005, it was the minor period of the megalithic 18.6 lunar cycle, and I managed to get a thing in the newspaper inviting people to come and see it in a megalithic alignment called St. Barb alignment here, which is orientated towards this minor moon on an 18.6 year cycle, and 500 people turned up.
That's incredible.
To watch that, and we saw, it was a beautiful day. It was the 3rd of July, I think, in 2015, and we saw this moon coming out exactly at the spot that it should come. In fact, it was coming out of a church spire, because a church had been built at the exact spot.
Right.
So we saw the full moon coming up out of that church spire. Yeah.
And what people don't understand, we take this 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle for granted. Oh, well, they just were able to do this. But it's difficult, really difficult to understand. At 18, you have to track the moon, the rising and falling and setting and falling of the lunar cycle for 18-and-a-half years. How would you, if you were just here on the planet, let's say, and I beamed down and here I am on the planet, I wouldn't have any idea of what the moon was doing. And how do I know it's not a 20-year cycle or a 15-year cycle? Why 18-and-a-half? Because someone sat there and plotted this thing out. Someone, knew about it. And that,
there's
to me, is
observation going on for thousands of years.
Ancient book called the Book of Enoch. We talked about that a little earlier, where it says these entities came down. We believe that they were fallen angels, and they bestowed this knowledge on mankind. They just gave it to us. It was like a free download type of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's possible. It's obviously a possibility,
right? Sure.
And it's in mythology, for example, Greek mythology, you get that idea, the idea of Persephone,
yes,
who was underground, and so her mother
months,
came down, and so to find out where she was, she gave information to humans. She told them about music, astronomy, mathematics, and in exchange they told her where her daughter was. So in different cultures and different things, you get this idea.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is that all knowledge comes down from above.
Okay. There is a site in Portugal that some researchers say is older than Stonehenge, England. It is called Cromic Almendres, and like many other sites, there are standing stones aligned with the summer solstice and equinoxes. We interviewed researcher and author Paulo Lucasso, who weighed in on the 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. Our guide and good friend Francisco Correa translated for us. The Book of Enoch, which is found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, talks about fallen angels coming to earth and siring children with human women, known as the Nephilim. It's our hypothesis that this site may be a Nephilim site. In other words, it may have been constructed by giants and it may have been constructed by fallen angels. Speak to that.
Sim, sim. Na minha perspectiva, esse conhecimento que veio dos anjos caídos,
the knowledge that came from the fallen angels,
em termos míticos,
in mythical terms,
é o mesmo que quando Prometeu roubou o fogo aos deuses e o entregou aos humanos.
It's the same as the narrative from when Prometheus stole the fire from the gods and gave it to the man.
Como está no teatro greco,
as it's represented in the Greek theater.
Por Aeschylus, ainda Prometeu agrilhoado. Há livro.
There's one book about Prometheus.
Escrito transmite as diferentes ciências aos humanos.
When he transmits the different knowledge, the different sciences to the humans.
Right. Which it mirrors exactly what we read in the Book of Enoch.
Sim.
So let me ask you something.
Para mim,
for him it's the same.
It's the same.
É a mesma coisa.
Okay, I agree.
Isso eu penso que foi antes do dilúvio.
He thinks it's prior to the
Great Flood.
Antes do dilúvio.
I antediluvian. I agree.
Depois do dilúvio,
after the flood,
então veio Deucalião e Pirra. No conhecimento grego.
Comes
Deucalião.
The Greek mythos picks up on what happened before the flood.
Exactly.
Então, eu penso que este sítio tem o conhecimento de antes do dilúvio, mas pode ter sido construído depois do dilúvio.
This place has here represents the knowledge before the flood, but may have been built after the flood.
Oh, I love that. Okay, say that again. Wow, that's flipping amazing. Wow, that's just, you travel thousands of miles to hear what you hope to hear, and there it is.
So this place, according to his perspective, represents the knowledge that was here before the Great Flood, but this place may have been built after the flood.
In 1st Enoch, we're introduced to an individual known as Sariel. Now, Sariel is a supernatural being. He's the leader of the group of angels who left their heavenly abode, and who descended to the summit of Mount Hermon, lusted after human women, and who together they married whoever they wanted and had these abnormal offspring with them, as we find in Genesis chapter 6. Now, Sariel, according to 1st Enoch, imparted some knowledge to humanity, and this knowledge had to do with the lunar calendar, specifically with the 18.6-year lunar cycle. In other words, this is not something, according to 1st Enoch, that humanity discovered on our own. It was something that we acquired from fallen angels through supernatural revelation.
So this knowledge is coming from somewhere. Why build an edifice with thousands of tons of stone like this just to track a lunar procession? Something else is going on here. And what's amazing to me is again, Native Americans did not travel in this sort of site work. I mean, they just didn't do it, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Well, the tradition of Native Americans in the Northeast has been that they didn't build big stone structures, which may or may not be correct, but as far as we know, they weren't involved with this kind of... But there is a real close similarity in the construction of this site to features found out throughout the western part of Europe, where there are over 50,000 megalithic sites. The inscriptions, place names of New England, mountains, rivers, valleys, and gorges, Dr. Barry Fell says, are not only Native American with a certain meaning, but they're found in Spain and the Iberian Peninsula.
Sure.
So there seems to be a contact.
Portugal.
In Portugal too, yeah.
Absolutely.
Probably into France and part of the west, Ireland. But there seems to be a lot of size, shape, and orientation of the structures that are the same on both sides of the ocean. And there's been things like coins, as Kelsey had mentioned, and so it looks like there was cross-Atlantic travels by ancient people. Otherwise, you have independent invention, and you have a lot of coincidences that can't be answered, How can these things be the same on both sides without people talking to one another, So that's been a kind of the million-dollar question. Isolationism of the Americas until Columbus came, or were people traveling the oceans?
And we know that the prevailing paradigm in archaeological circles is isolationism. I'm a diffusionist. I know you guys are diffusionists. People want to see what's over the next hill.
Yeah.
It's just, human curiosity. Dr. Mark Kahn points to the writings of Diodorus, who was an ancient Greek historian who lived 30 years before the birth of Christ, who in his writings talked about a land west of the Pillars of Hercules. Could that land have been America? Do these writings bolster the theory of diffusionism and that the ancients traveled the globe and created sites like we see at America's Stonehenge, far in advance of Columbus?
Diodorus Siculus, or Diodorus of Sicily, is an enigmatic ancient figure that I suppose we could probably give the title of the father of world history. In 56 BC, he wrote a monumental work called Bibliotheca Historica, and it was a universal history of mankind as the ancients understood it, from the time of myth all the way up into around 60 BC. And in book number 5, chapters number 19 and 20, we read of a discussion of the discovery of an unknown land. But now as we have discussed what relates to the islands which lie within the Pillars of Hercules, we shall give an account of those which are in the ocean. For there lies out in the deep off Libya. Libya is how the ancients understood the continent of Africa. Everything to the west of Egypt was in their mind Libya. Out in the deep off Libya, an island of considerable size, and situated as it is in the ocean, it is distant from Libya, a voyage of a number of days to the west. Its land is fruitful. In ancient times, this island remained undiscovered because of its distance from the entire inhabited world. But it was discovered at a later period for the following reason. The Phoenicians, who were from ancient times, made voyages continually for purposes of trade, planted many colonies throughout Libya, and not a few as well in the western parts of Europe. And since their ventures turned out according to their expectations, they amassed great wealth and essayed to voyage beyond the Pillars of Hercules into the sea which men call the ocean. The Phoenicians then, while exploring the coast outside the Pillars for the reasons we've stated, and while sailing along the shore of Libya, were driven by a strong wind a great distance out into the ocean. And after being storm-tossed for many days, they were carried ashore on the island we mentioned above. And when they had observed its felicity and nature, they caused it to be known to all men. What was this land? Some have surmised that it perhaps is discussing Great Britain. The British Isles are not many days' journey outside of the Strait of Gibraltar. They weren't unknown during the time of Diodorus. If you trace a straight line due west, where do you land? It's not Great Britain. It's not the Azores, not the Canary Islands. You land on the shores of North America. Could it be that these ancient Phoenicians discovered, accidentally or not, North America? Of particular interest to those who have a foundation in biblical studies, they know the Phoenicians by another name, as the Canaanites. The Canaanites were driven out of the land of Canaan by the Israeli army as they left the land of Egypt following a 40-year wilderness wandering. And then as they began to enter into this land, the former inhabitants of Canaan had to flee. According to this ancient history recorded by Diodorus Siculus in 56 BC, records a fact that somehow we have forgotten, and that is that the Phoenicians discovered what appears to be North America.
We were taken aback when Dennis Stone gave us information that he had withheld from other production companies who had filmed at the site. What you are about to see is revealed for the first time and essentially establishes America's Stonehenge as the Axis Mundi, the center of the world. There is a connection to other ancient sites thousands of miles away, and this is not a coincidence. There is absolutely no way to do this 4 millennia ago. We can do this today by triangulation in the air. However, thousands of years ago there were no planes, no satellites, no surveying techniques. Who is the prince of the power of the air?
So again, we're looking at the America Stonehenge, and you can see the different lines here that are, these are tree swaths that were cut out starting in 1967. We already talked about the one that goes to the northeast, to the summer solstice sunrise. It goes through Stonehenge. Upon further investigation, we started drawing other lines on these avenues, and we just kept going with the line until, 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles out. As it turns out, this particular line going to the south, it goes through Machu Picchu down in Peru, right there. And if you change the scale, it's going to be up here somewhere. Yeah, right in that area there. You see the site pop up here somewhere. So I click right in. Anyway, it might be, yeah, there it is right there. As you can see it. Isn't that amazing? It goes right, I mean, that's a couple thousand miles. That's pretty good. And if we go back to our place again, these are quite surprising to us, by the way. We're just taking these lines and going out with them, and seeing what out there. Now, these are United Nations World Heritage Sites. These are pretty big sites. They're important. This one right here, going to the east, is our equinox sunrise. And we're going into the Canary Islands. And I didn't know these structures existed, but they change the size, and you have to get in here a little bit closer and see if we can find them, make sure we're in the right place. We may have to shoot this one over again because I think we're off somewhere. Oh, there they are right there. These are the pyramids in the Canary Islands. They're right there. And you can change the scale so you can see them, yeah. And it goes right through the center of those too. And until I took this line over there, I didn't know we had Canary Island pyramids. And you can see the platforms there, the terrace platforms. There's one there, and this one right there. The line goes right through the center of it. But now we can go back again to our place. And there are two more that are really interesting. I think as interesting as the ones we've seen so far. This one right here goes, and it is our equinox sunset, the opposite of the Canary Islands. And we go into here. Uh-oh. Well, you may have to take my word for it, but it's Chaco Canyon. And Chaco Canyon is a big site, but it does go into Chaco Canyon. But we can take this one right here. And this is our winter solstice sunset. It's a pretty significant alignment. He goes to the moon pyramid at Teotihuacan.
Another piece of the puzzle, which is astounding to me, that they tracked this down to because of the tilt of the Earth and everything else, about 1800 BC, which fits the timeline, which you've been told that the site is about 4,000 years old, plus or minus a couple hundred years. I mean, I get that. It also ties in with our theory that there was a diaspora of giants, and that these giants, the Nephilim, left the Levant. It's incredible that you can't do this. You can't. It's not a coincidence that you line up the summer solstice stone and wind up intersecting the center trilithon at Stonehenge. Okay, that's a coincidence, right? But then you've got Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, you've got Teotihuacan in Mexico, and Chaco Canyon. That becomes astounding because we're looking at thousands of miles of distance between these points. And Fritz, what are your thoughts when you hear that, when you see this?
Well, what I never realized, this is the axis mundi of the ancient world.
Wow.
That everything is emanating out of this spot right here.
The Axis Mundi, the center of the world, is the title of this film. And I want to point out to you what we just saw moments ago in the film. Webster defines the axis mundi as a line or stem through the Earth's center, connecting its surface to the underworld and the heavens around which the universe revolves. Fritz Zimmermann's finger pointed to the center of America's Stonehenge and called it the axis mundi. He did this because from this point, there are direct alignments that connect America's Stonehenge to other sites, specifically Chaco Canyon, Teotihuacan, Machu Picchu, the pyramids on the Canary Islands, and of course, Stonehenge, England. What makes this astonishing is this: the Earth is a globe, and thus there is no straight line running between these sites. Whoever orchestrated these precise alignments that are drawn from the standing stones that are aligned with the solstices and equinoxes at America's Stonehenge knew about the curvature of the Earth. Even more incredible is the fact of the positioning of America's Stonehenge so that the solstices and equinoxes would connect to these other points around the globe. As we have stated, the only way to accomplish this is to know about the curvature of the Earth, as well as applying advanced trigonometry to accomplish the connection. How was this done thousands of years ago?
They call it the navel of the Earth.
This is a printout of the map, and we see that this is America's Stonehenge here, and then it radiates out down to Machu Picchu, Teotihuacan, Chaco Canyon, and Stonehenge, England is here. Now, what's this line?
So that one there is the equinox sunrise, and we're looking at the Canary Islands and the pyramid platforms in the Canary, which I didn't really know exist until I was shooting this line across the ocean. I just, just for chance, and I get there and I'm looking at the Canary Islands, and then the pyramids show up as you change the scale on Google Earth. And then I did a little more investigation. Yes, there are pyramids in me.
So, I mean, there is no way to do this in the ancient world unless you can triangulate from the air. And as Scripture tells us, who is the prince of the power of the air? And this points back to the dragon. The only way you can do this is from the air, to triangulate it from the air. Scripture tells us that the prince of the power of the air is the dragon. And because he's the prince of the power of the air, in my opinion, this is Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. I mean, this is, if it was just one line that went from America's Stonehenge to the Center Trilithon in England, you'd go, well, that's an amazing coincidence. But you've got 5 points now that we know of. There may be more. I would conjure that there are more alignments here. And the fact that these are exact lines to these points, Chaco Canyon, Teotihuacan, Machu Picchu, that to me is incredibly telling. and that cannot be dismissed as coincidence.
They're pretty significant sites. I mean, they're World Heritage sites, I believe, all of them. So very, very significant. And they are on our significant alignments, too, as you mentioned. I think we'll find more. We just have to do more research and investigation on these lines here.
Fritz mentioned this earlier. Is there any connection at all with what we see in Ohio?
That's a great question. Ohio has amazing, as you've been to them, that's something we'll have to investigate. It's possible something like the May Day alignment or the August 1st sunset, the sunset alignments may go through there. I think we'll have to just go out and go into Google Earth and just go out there and see what we have, But the funny thing is they're right on the money too. They go right into the site, into the heart of these sites, that alignment, So it's pretty.
It's preposterous. It's profound. It really is. It just I knew about this one, but I didn't know about the others until we came here today.
Well, we didn't either until I started playing around with it a couple of years after my son found this alignment, which kind of stood the hairs up on the back of my neck.
It did. Well, I said, I fell off my chair when I saw it. I called you the next day.
Yeah, I know you did. Yeah, and then we started finding the other ones, and we ran the lines many times just to make sure we weren't making mistakes. Other people can try this too and verify it, but I think they are.
So, what is the distance between here and, let's say, Machu Picchu? I mean, it's thousands of miles.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And you can't get a string long enough to do that, folks. So you've got to be in the air, and this is where it really goes off the rails for me. That the alignment of these standing stones has to be absolutely dead on, completely 100% dead on. If they're off a foot in either direction, then it's going to completely move this line out.
You'll miss by miles.
And so when we start thinking about that, it's mind-boggling. It really is mind-boggling.
How many coincidences can you have?
No, there are no coincidences. This is deliberate. Folks, I think we are looking at the fingerprints of the supernatural. This is astounding, and it should make any archaeologist that's honest look at this and start to rewrite their thinking, because these are the fingerprints of the supernatural. You can't do this 4,000 years ago unless you're in the air. Who is the prince of the power of the air? I showed you that the line that Kelsey Stone did on Google Earth from the summer solstice, a standing stone, and we extended that line. He extended that line, and Kelsey, when he did that, it just blew us away. And it winds up intersecting the center trilithon at Stonehenge. I mean, directly in the middle. It's not off by a mile. I mean, it's like pinpoint laser beam accuracy, thousands of miles away. Now, when I showed that to you, I mean, that's mind-boggling, and that shows a connection between the two sites. It's just not coincidence. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think there is a connection very specifically. We have these alignments all around the world and connecting these sites up there. Both of these sites are almost like the most important sites in their respective countries, in North America and in ancient Britain. So there's something to be said about that. But also, all the sites in New England, we have like Gunji Wamp, America Stonehenge, we have stone circles there like Druids Hill Stone Circle in New Hampshire. We have North Salem Dolmen, Ballast Rock, which is a massive European style dolmen. It does seem like the influence of that area did come from Europe and this part of Britain perhaps. And so we have to question what's going on here. Was there migrations out of this part of the world going into North America? Was there much more movement around the planet in ancient times than we realize? And does it prove the idea of diffusionism, that there were connections with these other areas? And you can see that in the sites. You can see, like with the mound culture sites in North America, we see the geometry, we see the mathematics, we see the alignments and the astronomy, and they're almost identical in principle to the sites in Britain and Europe.
In college, I took a course called Probability and Statistics, and with the laws of chance, basically. And when you see something like that, and it goes right through the center, then you start to really wonder, it looks intentional rather than just some sort of an accident.
It cannot be an accident.
Yeah,
it can't be.
Either that, or some people. Not many people believe in just coincidence anymore, but I think it's the archaeologist's favorite word. Everything's a coincidence. And you're looking at the solar, the lunar, and the stellar alignment, which is the north. And 4,000 years ago, Thuban in Alpha Draconis, the dragon, would have been the star aligned with true north.
What was that constellation?
Yeah, it's Thuban. Draco the constellation.
The dragon.
Yeah, Draco the dragon.
Is that just a coincidence, or is that heralding?
This
I mean,
site's,
I didn't know that before you said that.
Yeah, due to that 25,900 year
So
procession.
who is the prince of the power of the air? Is another
dragon.
name for him is the dragon.
Dragon. And
So this
Draco.
all hails back to the dragon, and this is why there's validity here. There's something that's so profound. We are looking at the prince of the power of the air, and we are exposing the deception of the prince of the power of the air.
Another coincidence.
Wow. In my opinion, there's no way you can do this in the natural world. There's just no way you can do it. You can do it in modernity. We've got satellites. We can triangulate things from the air, but you can't do this. What we see here, you can't do this 4,000 years ago. So, I mean, to belabor a point, because I think it's mind-blowing, it's astounding. So there's two possibilities. You can have guys in UFOs flying around doing this 4,000 years ago, or you've got the prince of the power of the air, the dragon, and the fact that this whole thing points to the constellation of the dragon, to me, is extremely telling. And I would also posit that there's a connection between ufology and what we see in these ancient sites. In fact, in many sites like Stonehenge and Machu Picchu, there are sightings of UFOs over these ancient megalithic works. So I think they go hand in glove, and I think they are the fingerprints of the dragon. And that's what we're here to expose. I have been to America Stonehenge 4 times, and every time I visit, I discover something new and interesting about the site. The last time I was there was with Fritz Zimmerman, who has appeared in pretty much all of our On the Trail of a Nephilim films. We spent 5 days filming on the site, and what we learned, as we show in the film, was absolutely mind-blowing. Think about it. What Kelsey Stone discovered had been hidden from the peoples of the world for thousands of years. No one knew about the connection between America's Stonehenge and the Stonehenge in the UK. No one knew. Dennis Stone shared information with us that he had never shared with another film company. This is a great honor, and I want to personally thank Dennis and the entire Stone family for trusting us with this incredible information. When Fritz, Dennis, and I were seated in what we came to call the war room, we were taken aback by what Dennis was showing us. This led Fritz to call America's Stonehenge the Axis Mundi, the center of the world. There seems to be a direct connection between America's Stonehenge, Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, Teotihuacan in Mexico, Machu Picchu in Peru, the pyramids on the Canary Islands, and of course, Stonehenge, England. This is not a coincidence, and to do this, even in modernity, requires advanced surveying techniques, triangulation from the air, and knowing the precise curvature of the Earth. All of these factors must be taken into account to ensure that the alignments from the standing stones that surround the center of America's Stonehenge are in precise alignment. How is this done? And perhaps more importantly, by whom? As Carl Keicher pointed out, there seems to be something supernatural at work here. Are we looking at the footprints of the dragon? Remember, America's Stonehenge is aligned with the constellation known as Draco, or the dragon. Then there's the enigmatic Baal stone that proclaims the entire site is dedicated to Baal. And we know that the Phoenicians were descendants of the Canaanites, and the Canaanites were Nephilim tribe. There is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. This history points to a supernatural world, a world far different from our own. We see the vestiges of it all over the globe, literally hidden in plain sight. And that's why we're on the trail. Welcome to the On the Trail of a Nephilim series. Every Friday on the Ancient Alien series, which has been running for about 10 years, we are told ancient astronauts visited Earth and are responsible for the creation of man. In other words, the God of the Bible really didn't create us. E.T. did. They also claim that many of these ancient sites that we have discussed in our first 3 films of the series were once again attributed to E.T.'s intervention. However, there is another paradigm that speaks of a supernatural world, one that is based on the biblical narrative, and it is that paradigm that our series embraces and puts forth. This film is about our 6-year quest to nail down the possible origins of the mysterious elongated skulls that are found in Peru. You'll hear from archaeologists, anthropologists, surgeons, medical doctors, and a chiropractor who will state that these enigmatic skulls are not the result of cranial deformation or what is more commonly referred to as cradle headboarding, but are in fact genetic anomalies. Could these skulls be the remnant of one of the tribes of a Nephilim that we read about in our Bibles? The Anakim were listed as one of these tribes, and Anakim translates long neck. Is there a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the people of the world? Is there a managed agenda to bolster a particular narrative? We think so. And that's why we made this film, to expose the deception of the prince of the power of the air. Join us and examine the evidence for yourself.